There comes a time in every life when we need mercy. None of us here are so perfect in our conduct. None of us here are so free from error or possessed of so much power that we will never need mercy. The failing student needs mercy when she or he stands before the teacher. The teacher needs mercy when facing an issue with the principal. The principal needs mercy before the director of education. The director of education needs mercy at presentations before the school board. And the school board needs mercy when unhappy parents and taxpayers call. And you could keep going. So the question is not who needs mercy. The question is, how soon will you need mercy? How often do you need mercy? How much mercy do you need? And that's why the words of Jesus in the fifth beatitude grab our attention when he says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Jesus is basically saying, why don't you assure yourself of mercy? Because you know that there's going to be a time when you're going to need it. And the promise seems to be true. Merciful people do seem to receive mercy in return. And so for that reason, I would suggest that most of us are very grateful for the last part of this beatitude. We are very grateful that there are people in our lives, there are situations in our lives where we have been shown mercy. We hope we will receive mercy when we need it. But being human, we may not give as much attention to the first part of Jesus' blessing, the one that calls us to be merciful people. And that's where Jesus' beatitude puts us to the test. Throughout the Gospel of Matthew, in this Beatitudes, this fifth beatitude, we're basically beginning a new emphasis in the Beatitudes. Up until this point, the first four blessings of Jesus have focused primarily on a state of mind, primarily on our attitudes. But this beatitude talks about a blessing for people who act, specifically for people who are merciful towards others. And throughout the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus' own life, Jesus' own teachings repeatedly model how important it is that the followers of Jesus be people of mercy. On multiple occasions, you read through the Gospel of Matthew, people come in need of healing to Jesus, like the blind man, like a mother whose daughter is demon-possessed, like a father whose son suffers seizures. And they all together cry out to Jesus every time when they are in need of healing, "Lord, have mercy." And his parable of the unmerciful servant in Matthew 18 emphasizes in a somewhat different way that those who receive mercy need to be people who show mercy. And Jesus criticizes the Pharisees for ignoring the weightier, the heavier matters of the law, one of which, he says, is mercy, and something that is required of God's people. I think it's fair to say that in sum, Jesus' life, Jesus' teaching evokes that classic statement of the prophet Micah. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. In addition to the word mercy, we need to understand what we're talking about. because we bring our worldly understandings into the teachings of Jesus. And we always have to be checking ourselves at that. This word merciful that Jesus is using here isn't this pervasive and shallow virtue that is found in our day and age where we're nice. Canadians are nice people. Sorry about that. We're just nice. Where we are tolerant people. It is so much more than being nice. It is so much more than toleration. It is about concrete actions of love, compassion, and sympathetic grace to those who are oppressed, to those who have sinned. The merciful are those who, because they do to others what they would want done to themselves, and because they have experienced God's mercy, God's merciful love, the merciful empathize and show compassion to others. When we speak of mercy and our need for mercy and our hope that we will receive mercy, we need to look carefully at the price tag that's attached to mercy. Mercy does not come without any cost. It may be that all this world needs is a simple act of being kind, of toleration. But the trouble is that the act of being kind is not as simple as we might make it out to be. If kindness was so simple, why isn't it more widespread? Why isn't it a way of life for most people? Mercy is hard work, and mercy has a price to it. Mercy is hard work because, for one thing, being merciful takes an emotional investment. This biblical concept of mercy is, and this is a definition that someone has given to it, mercy is the ability to get right inside the other person's skin until we can see things with her eyes, think things with his mind, and feel things with their feelings. Mercy. Between you and me, that's the kind of total involvement that most of the time I can't even imagine. And I suggest that when we think about that, when we imagine that, we're likely to avoid it. It's the kind of involvement that has been described as literally picking up another person's pain so that it is no longer theirs to carry. Who likes to carry other people's pain? It's far easier to avoid looking pain in the eyes than to invest ourselves in that kind of mercy. Mercy that we see with the sufferer's eyes and feel with the sufferer's feelings. Mercy is much more than a financial contribution then. Mercy is much more than a note or a passing visit. It's getting right inside the other person's skin. When we face that kind of involvement, we're less likely, I think, to kind of tut-tut as we hear the story of the Good Samaritan, and then we are so quick to pass judgment on the priest and the Levite who passed by on the other side. We wouldn't be like that, or would we? Mercy isn't easy. It's an emotional investment, but it's even more than an emotional investment. True mercy, as I've already suggested, calls for action. It isn't enough to shed a tear of sympathy, though tears do help at times. If we shed tears, yet do nothing concrete to relieve the other person's need, our tender-heartedness can become very inward-focused, self-serving. Mercy is just as practical, as down-to-earth, and as dirty your hands with the problem as it is emotional. When we're talking about mercy, we're not just talking about an emotional investment. We're talking about something that finds expression. It finds expression in the kitchen, in the classroom, in the workplace, at the grocery store. Mercy is nothing if it isn't practical. There's a story I came across this past week about a 19th century British politician, pacifist. His name was Jacob Bright. And Jacob Bright came upon a poor neighbor on the road. This is in the 19th century now, 1800s. This neighbor's horse had been injured and it had to be destroyed. And one man in the crowd that had gathered to witness this tragedy was especially verbose in showing his pity. And suddenly Jacob Bright said, as all the neighbors were going, "Yeah, it's really too bad, really." Jacob Bright said, I am sorry, 5 pounds worth. How much are you sorry?" And he began taking up a collection to buy the man a new horse. When we express our sorrow, when we express our concern over the plight of another, here's a good, very practical question for us. How much am I sorry? How many dollars worth am I sorry? How many hours am I sorry? How many deeds? How many things could I do? Am I sorry? Genuine mercy. It's hard work. It's an emotional investment. It calls for action. But it's also hard work because it is intellectually demanding. Well, mercy often expresses itself in very simple ways. It's often true that mercy forces us into thinking about complex judgments. Let me try to give you examples. Suppose you're on a jury. If you're on a jury and you show mercy to the defendant, do you do that at the expense of being merciful to the injured party? If one of your students, teachers, is doing poor work, are you merciful in letting him or her feel that the work is better than it is? Will that student ever have the opportunity to grow if mercy hides failings? You see the complex judgments that mercy forces upon us? Mercy can be intellectually demanding. Mercy, to go back to our kids' time video, will make us put on our thinking caps. When a child needs correction, is it merciful to withhold it? Or might it be more merciful to correct? So mercy is never easy. Rarely is mercy simple. It's an emotional investment, it calls for action, and it's intellectually demanding. You know, it's easy to agree with this fifth beatitude. We want mercy. We want mercy because we need it. And we often like to extend it because it makes us feel noble to be merciful. But we forget how difficult it can be to extend mercy to others. Because in order to be merciful, you have to pay a high emotional, practical, and intellectual price. So mercy isn't easy. If it were, as I said earlier, we would all be practicing it much more often than we do. Mercy is never easy. It's rarely simple. But mercy is one of the godliest qualities that we humans are allowed. God is merciful, and therefore we are called to be like our Father and be merciful. We are commanded to exercise mercy. When we are merciful, we imitate our Lord, whose mercy is, as we began our worship time this morning, his mercy is unfailing. It is, as Jeremiah says, new every morning. And the opportunities to extend mercy are new every morning. They're all around us. Almost everywhere we look, someone wants mercy. Someone longs for it, desperately needs it. Even though the cry may be inaudible, maybe even the need is unseen. It's all around us. And it should, in truth, be easy for you and me to respond. After all, we're here this morning because we have received mercy. When we call ourselves Christians, we identify as people who have received God's ultimate mercy. That's what we just remembered at the table. We are wealthy in the share of mercy that we have received. And we are now called, commanded to go, leave this place and share that wealth, to share that wealth of mercy with others whose lives are destitute and poor when it comes to mercy. It's a privileged way to live. It's part of a life shaped by this beatitude. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy.